Hello guys, welcome to part 2 of how I made the Czequestria 2024 intro. In this part, I'll be talking about how I made the backgrounds, the background assets, and also how I animated the main character Libuse. If you haven't seen the previous video, please go check it out so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, let's get into it. Now, the storyboard sounds easy fun, just a bomb of ideas that I wanted to put in. And then the actual production was like, So, one of the first things that I started doing was making this run cycles and the walk cycles because I realized that it would be through most of the animation and it's one of the main focuses is just Libusha walking. So, I thought it would be smart to do that first. So I started by making the trot, run, and walk cycle. First, just simple sketches. I was looking at the reference the whole time because I obviously couldn't do this by myself without help of a reference. And then when the sketches were done, I did the line art. I just did the outlines of the eyes and the nose. I didn't give the pony a mouth, a hair, or anything because I realized what if I want to use it for a different pony? It's gonna be universal for every pony basically. And also, in case Libusha decides to change her facial expression, it would make it easier in case she's looking the point of direction where she's looking. So I kept it really bland at the beginning and decided to add more details later. Next, I needed to make some backgrounds, which I'm not a background artist. I can't make backgrounds. It's not really fun for me, and I had no idea how to do it. The first thing that came to mind was I wanted to make some houses. And I spent like a month learning what I learned in high school when it comes to 3D graphics because I wanted the houses to have like this kind of warping, the perspective, like when you're passing an actual house, which would probably take an eternity in 2D animation. So I thought, let's make a 3D house and then remove the outlines, make it look 2D, give it some 2D textures. That's gonna do it. And I decided to make a smaller house first because I didn't want to give myself some like big ideas and then realize I couldn't do it. So I just, start small. And then I had to learn how to texture the houses because I only knew certain ways how to add like textures and they weren't helpful. So I had to learn like the UV wrap and everything. And if you were asking me to explain, I won't because I don't know what's going on. I think I just got lucky. So I had the small house done and then I moved on to the bigger one, which was kind of different from two sides. And I did this on purpose because I wanted to reuse the same asset, but by showing it from different points of view, from like the front and from the back, it would look like a completely different house. Surprisingly, that worked. And, well, now I know 3D. Kind of. I just kind of left the houses alone at first. They didn't have like any special effects to them. They were still kind of like shaded like a regular 3D, and I didn't pay attention to that. I just moved on. I was like, I'm gonna come back to that later. I like to do that a lot. And then I started working on the actual backgrounds, which, boy oh boy. As I mentioned, I'm not a background artist and I didn't know what I was doing. I actually had no idea how to make a one long continuous background. And my process was kind of questionable. At first, I made this like test where I put in the pony running or walking or whatever speed I needed, and then I drew black and white lines on the floor basically to indicate what distance she would have to walk, how long the background should actually be. So in the end, she can actually go through all the backgrounds and it wouldn't look like she's either walking too fast or faster than the background is moving, or slower, because then it looks like the pony is on ice. She's just sliding around, which was helpful in only one case, which would be the part where she was actually on ice. So so after I had the black and white lines cut out, I did some tests to see the exact speed I would need. I would count the number of lines that I needed to make the background for each season, and then I started drawing it in Photoshop, which I kind of had a placement for each thing, but not exactly. It was kind of just like, oh, okay, so here's spring. I just know I need to make some dents, and then some field, and then some ice, and that was about it. I didn't know how long to make it, or it was questionable to me also. Not to mention, uh, when you make a file too big for Photoshop, it just kind of downgrades the quality automatically. And I was like, no, I don't want to have a lower quality. So I had to battle that because I made like a PSB file, which is Photoshop big, I think. And it was just like a strip. It wasn't even the entire background. It was just like always one season, just like a string of spring, a spring, and a string for summer. That one was the shortest, probably. I could fit that into a one file, and then string for winter and fall, which were the longest because she was running, so she covered the biggest area basically. And then I realized I can't export it properly because it just downgrades the quality. So that was a hiccup that I came across. And what I had to do, I basically copied the file so I would have my original progress, and then I cropped it like part one, part two, part three. So I just cut it up into a bunch of smaller segments, and that seemed fine and like a good decision until you come to the editing part and you have to connect backgrounds in a way that they're the same speed. I don't know. I use Premiere Pro, and I don't. Up until now, I have no idea how to do this efficiently, especially if each background is like a different length. Also, Libusha sometimes speeds up, slows down, stops, comes back running. She doesn't jump from like running to the standing point. Well, in this case she does, but not the rest of the cases. So she goes from like a run into a trot into a walk, and then she stops. And for each of these parts you have to make it a different speed, so it just seems smooth. So she's not sliding, I don't want no sliding for my ponies. Then I came across the problems with the editing, where sometimes the background would just do and then suddenly there's like a huge gap, a void in the background. It's like, no. And then it just took so long to edit. It was crazy. I also came across another problem. I think I miscounted, or in the end she was actually trotting a bit slower or running a bit slower than I expected, because suddenly I had extra background and I was like, what now? Like, because it's a continuous animation from one point to another. Basically, the only transition I had was fall, winter. And I had to make up an idea, where do I cut the background in such a way, or how do I pace it so it looks smooth, and so it actually like covers the most area that I needed, because like that's what I was worried about. That's why I made the whole black and white line thing, because I was afraid that the background would be also either shorter or longer than I needed. I think longer maybe is a bit better option than the shorter one, but still. In the end, I think I paced it out by making her ran through the spring a little longer and then stopping for the summer and then also making her walk the summer a little longer. It was always just like a few milliseconds or seconds, so it wouldn't be too noticeable, still to kind of go with the music. And then I had like this piece of fall extra background, and thank God there was the transition, so I was able to just cut it. But yeah, just know there's like an unused background lying somewhere in my closet or in my computer, I guess. And honestly, the background was the probably the hardest, most annoying part because I honestly didn't know how to execute it well, especially since the background also isn't looping, it's always changing, always different. The floor is changing colors and whatnot. Connected so it doesn't like overlay or doesn't split in between was a nightmare, and I'll be honest, I procrastinated a lot during that time and I lost a lot of time because of this. I think I could have finished faster or maybe added more detail if I wasn't procrastinating on the backgrounds. I also made some background assets that I would reuse because even in the original series they had just assets that they were reusing again and again. So that was the trees. I had like a folder for each kind of tree. There were like background trees and further in the distance trees and then the apple trees and then special trees like the cherry tree and the Christmas tree. And then there were some other assets like clouds. So some of these assets weren't reused, they were just like a one time asset, like some of the special trees, the seats in summer, the stands in fall during the Nightmare Night Fest. It was honestly easier to make the assets separately than make them part of the backgrounds because that would become even a bigger nightmare with the backgrounds. So I just decided to make them separately and then throw them on a new layer. After all the assets were done, I started working on the actual ponies. Libusche was preferred. It in the end it actually took so much longer than I thought it would. Although there were just 4 run cycles, all the pauses, all the different wardrobe changes. In the end, it was actually pretty ridiculously long. Number one, I had, as I said, I had the basic canvas for a pony, no eyelashes, no mouth, no like pupils. I think she did have a horn, but she didn't have a hair. She didn't have any clothes. So first, I started drawing the mane or the hair, whatever you like. When that was done, I did always the eyelashes and the mouth for each frame different. That's why they maybe look kind of buggy at sometimes because they're not the same, to be honest. I didn't feel like copying it for some reason. It was easier to just draw it over again than to copy it. And then I also had to do the pauses, the wardrobe changes. So first was the pause during spring where she just looks concerned. She looks up like what's going on. Well, that was probably one of the most challenging just because I didn't do any like stops or pace changes. I like you can make a pony trot, but how do you make him stop trotting is a question. That was a tough task, but then I kind of figured out how to make it work. And then I copied the entire file where she was just trotting and stopping and then going back to trot without her clothes. And then I made the new file where I added the vest because I thought like, oh, maybe later it will come handy. I will reuse it, if she needs to stop again or something. Another part was in spring where she was going to do some ice skating, which first I had to make her like jump a little bit to make her skates appear, which in the end, I wish the jump was bigger. I thought it was bigger when I looked at it first. It seemed bigger, but once the skates appeared, they were a bit taller than she actually was, and she was almost on the ground. So I would probably change that if I could. I'm lazy though. Then it was probably one of the easiest part is when she's sliding on the ice. I was like, I could make her do cool tricks, but nah, just gonna make her slide on like this. And then I think one of my favorite parts of the animation is when she jumps from the ice lake and the skates just stay there, you know? The jump was so much better than the first one because at first she was just running and then she's like, pew. From the trot, she just jumps. But when she was just on the lake standing still, there could be a more build up to the jump when she was getting off. So I worked on that a little bit more, just making her kind of get it down first because that's like just how animation works. I don't know how to explain it. First there's like the build up of the animation and then there's the jump and then she lands with the skates staying behind. That was probably one of my favorite parts. Then she just uses magic to get into the summer clothes and kind of slows down. That wasn't too hard, just kind of have to shift the hooves around so they make sense. When she comes to the transition summer fall, she comes to a complete stop again. That's when I reused some of the old frames from the first trot stop and also the part where she like looks up. That's the same part. I just changed the facial expressions from like frowny and concerned to smiling, and then just thank God magic exists in My Little Pony makes everything so much easier. She doesn't have to use her hoof to take the head off. She just magically makes it float away. And then she just takes off running. That's I think that part wasn't that complicated either. I think the run, the gallop is probably also one of my favorite animations. That it just looks way smoother than the walk. I think in the end I noticed that she was actually limping a bit during walking. It did kind of look like she was limping, and I didn't even intend for it. And I was counting like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 to see her like put each hoof down, you know, and what's the rhythm. And it was fine. I was like, why are you limping? Easiest transition, probably was fall to winter because she just got covered in leaves. She kept running, but all I needed to do was just like change her clothes and position the leaves in a right way so she would get entirely covered along with the background. And well, that's your wardrobe change. That saved me a lot of time than just having her like, you know, put on the stockings or the shoes or whatever. She stops during winter for like the New Year's Eve, but that was also very easy because just have all her hoofs put it down in the same time and she just kind of like breaks or whatever. And that was about it. And then she went back to the trot like she did from the beginning. That was also reused, and then she did the same stop as in the beginning. Many of these frames were reused for my own mental health. Thank you so much for watching this video. There will be part 3 where I finish the topic. If you would prefer longer videos, please let me know in the comments, or if you have any other suggestions also please let me know. And if you like the video, please leave a like and I will see you in the part 3. Bye!